I caught my wife and my best friend together in our bedroom. When I walked in on them, my wife snapped and said, "Get out of this room, you loser. Your friend makes me feel like a real woman in ways you never could." I didn't say a word to either of them. I just walked away. But once I made my move to seek justice for this betrayal, she started screaming. Before I begin this story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about betrayal and justice. Also, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. What I discovered about wife Kilena and my closest friend Drevik shattered everything I thought I knew about loyalty and betrayal. My name is Ellion Krauss, and I'm 42 years old. I've spent most of my working life as a structural consultant in the coastal town of Cedar Grove, Pennsylvania. Without wasting your time, I'll go straight into the main gist of this story. Before catching them red-handed, I had already started to suspect something was wrong. I and Kilena had been married for 15 years, and we had a beautiful 10-year-old daughter named Brilith. For some months, I could sense subtle changes in my wife's behavior, strange looks, sudden mood swings, and even emotional detachment. One night, she went to bed early while watching a YouTube documentary on her phone and fell asleep with the video still playing. I picked up her phone, and something in me said to check her messages. As I scrolled through, I found a string of flirty WhatsApp messages she had forgotten to delete between her and my best friend, Drevik. The messages weren't just playful. They were clearly romantic and deeply intimate. I couldn't sleep that night after seeing those messages. Drevik, who had recently gone through a divorce, and I worked together at the same company. We've known each other for 20 years. Drevik founded a tech company named Neuralink Systems, and the company specializes in AI-powered data integration for enterprise infrastructure. He brought me on board with his vision for the firm, and I had helped him build his company from the ground up. I had invested my own money when no other person would take that financial risk. I had worked countless hours without pay to help him establish his reputation in our industry. After seeing those chats between my wife and Drevik, I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought maybe I was overthinking things or misreading the meaning behind the messages, but they were clearly flirty and romantic. Just as I was about to take a picture of the chat with my phone, Kilena started showing signs of waking up. So I quickly dropped the phone and switched back to the YouTube app so she wouldn't suspect anything. I didn't say a word to her because I knew she would gaslight me for going through her private messages. So I decided to keep observing until I had concrete proof. I began observing. Drevik always had this weird pattern at the office by frequently calling in sick or claiming domestic emergencies. The excuses grew suspicious. One Thursday, when Drevik took another sudden day off, I trusted my gut. Quietly, I left work early and drove home. Entering through the back door, I crept inside toward my bedroom, and there they were, my wife Kilena and my best friend Drevik, together on my matrimonial bed, having an affair, the same room where Kilena and I had shared thousands of nights. But the betrayal wasn't the worst part. It was her response. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're not man enough for me. Drevik makes me feel like a real woman." Right there. She demanded a divorce and told me to leave the house immediately, threatening to falsely accuse me of domestic abuse if I didn't. I walked away without saying a word and gave them the privacy they needed. But that was when I realized this betrayal had been going on for a very long time indeed. I left the house and didn't return to work. Instead, I went to a nearby hotel to sit and think. I couldn't believe what I had just seen and heard. I spent the night there alone, lost in thought. The next day, I went straight to the office to confront Drevik. As soon as he saw me, he started apologizing, saying he'd always wanted to tell me, but didn't know how. He admitted he was in love with Kilena, and they had been trying to find the right time to tell me about their affair. I was stunned by the words coming out of his mouth. I couldn't believe it. Before I could respond, he interrupted and said that because I had witnessed him and my wife in a compromising situation, the company would no longer need my services. Drevik asked me to resign quietly, claiming my presence was bad for company morale. He offered no compensation for all my years of service and dedication to the company's success. I felt like lashing out at him, but he called company security to escort me out. 2 weeks after I discovered their affair, My divorce with Kilena was finalized by the county judge downtown. The court awarded Kilena full custody of our 10-year-old daughter Brilith without any consideration for my feelings. She received our house, the one I had worked so hard to build and maintain perfectly. The judge also ordered me to pay substantial child support every month moving forward indefinitely. Drevik moved into my former home almost immediately after the papers were signed by everyone involved. They began posting photos online showing their new life together in my former kitchen and living room. Kilena wrote captions about finally being home with the right man after all these wasted years. She smiled in every photo while cooking meals in the kitchen I had renovated for her. They displayed their happiness in the same rooms where I had celebrated birthdays and holidays for decades. Every image felt like another knife being twisted in my already wounded heart and soul. They did not just betray my trust in the most painful way possible that evening. They took my family, my home, and my means of earning a living in our community. They left me with nothing but painful memories and a broken heart that seemed impossible to heal. But what they did not know was that I was far from finished building my life. I was just getting started on a new chapter that would surprise everyone involved in this mess. Stay with me because the way I got justice for this betrayal changed everything about my future. After Kilena threw me out of our house and Drevik took my place in every aspect of my life, I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet completely. I would sit in my car for hours, parked just 2 blocks away from our home. I could see the warm glow from the windows of the house I had poured my heart into. I could hear their laughter carrying across the evening air from the front porch we had built together. I could not cry even though I wanted to release all this pain somehow. I could not even breathe properly because my chest felt so tight with hurt. I had given everything I possessed to both of these people over the course of many years. Kilena was a woman I had loved since my late 20s when we first met. I stood by her side through 2 heartbreaking miscarriages that nearly destroyed us both emotionally. I paid off all her student loans without complaint so she could pursue her dreams. I supported her decision to quit her job when she said she needed to find herself. I built our house with her specific preferences in mind for every single detail and feature. Every tile on the floor, every color on the walls, every light fixture hanging from the ceiling. It was supposed to be our dream home where we would grow old together in peace. Drevik had been more than just a friend to me for over 2 decades of partnership. He was like the brother I never had growing up as an only child. I stood as best man at his wedding ceremony and gave a heartfelt speech about friendship. I bailed him out financially when his first business venture nearly collapsed under mounting debts. I even gave him a substantial portion of my personal savings to keep his startup company alive. When his father passed away suddenly, I took a full week off work to help him. I helped him make funeral arrangements and bury the man who had raised him alone. I never once asked him for anything in return for all this help and support. I believed loyalty was its own reward, and that good deeds would come back to me. So how could these 2 people do this terrible thing to me after everything we had shared? How could 2 people who knew me better than anyone else cut me out like disposable trash? They knew every detail about my fears, my dreams, my hopes for our future together as family. Every memory we had created together now felt like a complete lie to me in hindsight. Every smile they had given me, every promise they had made, every toast we had raised. All of it felt poisoned by the knowledge of their secret relationship behind my back. I was 42 years old, financially broken, emotionally abandoned, and completely alone for the first time in decades. My daughter would not speak to me because she believed her mother's version of events. But even in that darkest moment of complete despair, something inside me began to change and sharpen. This was not over yet, not by a long shot, though I did not know it then. I would not let them destroy me without consequences for their actions against me. It was not just a betrayal alone that eventually drove me to seek justice and revenge. It was a realization that I had been disrespected to my very core as a human being. This time, accepting their betrayal quietly would mean accepting that my life had no value whatsoever. And when they took my daughter away from me through legal manipulation and lies, I realized this was about much more than heartbreak and disappointment. This was about my dignity as a man and my right to exist in this community. I wanted to get justice for this betrayal that had destroyed everything I held dear in life. But I still loved Kilena despite all her cruel actions toward me over these past months. Seeing her with Drevik in our former home made me feel so jealous and angry. I could not understand how she could throw away decades of marriage for this man. So I decided to focus my revenge on Drevik, because I believed he had stolen my wife away. I wanted to take back what belonged to me through hard work and dedication over many years. For weeks after the divorce was finalized, I wandered through each day like a ghost of myself. I barely existed in a tiny rented room across town from my former neighborhood and friends. I ate simple meals and slept poorly every night while processing this devastating loss of everything. But pain has a way of sharpening memory when you need it most for survival. One night, while sitting alone in the dim light of my small apartment, I remembered something important. 9 years ago, during the early days when Drevik started his tech company, he had committed several questionable financial maneuvers to keep the business afloat. In a desperate bid to impress early investors, Drevik fabricated user data to make our AI product look more advanced than it really was. He faked enterprise contracts by creating shell companies with fake emails and paper trails, just to inflate our client portfolio. He also applied for a federal tech innovation grant using forged research data and fake academic endorsements. The grant brought in over $500,000, which he funneled into marketing to attract investors, never using it for the intended R&D. To this day, no one knows the real project never existed. The most dangerous move? He quietly reused investor funds from the company's seed round to pay back old personal debts, without disclosing it to anyone. I found out, confronted him, and he shrugged it off. He said every successful business had to bend some rules to get established in competitive markets. I had let it slide because I was loyal to him and trusted his judgment completely. Now that same information became my weapon against him for destroying my life so carelessly and completely. I gathered every document I still possess from our years working together as business partners. I collected emails, bank records, and archived spreadsheets that showed his illegal activities over several years. I contacted a journalist who was known throughout our state for exposing corporate fraud and corruption. I quietly handed over everything I had gathered, making sure to remain anonymous in all communications. I did not want anyone to know I was the source of this information about Drevik. Within just a few days, the story exploded across local and regional news outlets everywhere. Headlines screamed about the Neuralink system scandal and the CEO who was under investigation for fraud. The articles detailed every illegal transaction and questionable business practice he had engaged in over the years. Investors immediately pulled their money out of his company to avoid being associated with the scandal. Business partners backed away from existing contracts and refused to work with him moving forward. The company that we had built together over decades of hard work crumbled within a single month. Drevik was arrested at his office in front of all his employees and clients. He was charged with multiple counts of corporate fraud and financial misrepresentation by state prosecutors. The local police walked him out in handcuffs while news cameras recorded every moment of his downfall. His reputation in our community was destroyed overnight by the revelations about his business practices. Everything he had built using my money and ideas was gone in an instant. Kilena, who had quit her job to build a future with him, suddenly found herself unemployed and broke. She had no job because she had burned bridges with her former employer to be with Drevik. Her social media posts about their perfect relationship disappeared completely from the internet. She went silent online and stopped appearing in public around town where people might recognize her. And I was watching all of this unfold quietly and calmly from my small apartment. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe normally again without pain. The storm they had created by destroying my life was now swallowing them whole instead. Kilena was now completely dependent on the child support money I was legally required to pay every month. She had no other source of income to maintain her lifestyle or take care of our daughter. Meanwhile, I decided to pay Drevik a visit in the county jail where he was being held. I wanted to see his face when he realized who had been responsible for his downfall. He looked me straight in the eye and asked if I was the one who had exposed him. I told him the complete truth about what I had done and why he deserved everything. I explained that it was payback for destroying my marriage and stealing my life away from me. But Drevik did not seem surprised or upset by my confession, as I had expected him to be. Instead, he leaned forward and told me something that changed everything I thought I understood about the situation. He said that I had started this war years ago when I stole Kilena away from him. That was when he confessed that he had been in love with her long before I ever met her. I had actually tried to help him approach her back in those early days when we were all young, but she had ended up falling in love with me instead of him, which created resentment he never forgot. What I had thought was genuine friendship over all these years, he had seen as theft of the woman. He had never forgiven me for winning her heart when he believed she should have been his. He revealed that he had been sleeping with her for over a decade while pretending to be my friend. This was not a recent affair that had developed suddenly between them, as I had believed. This was a long-term relationship that had been going on behind my back for most of our marriage. He said he had the best lawyers working on his case, and that even if he went to prison, he wouldn't be there for long. He got even more arrogant while I was looking at him, and I left without saying a word. What Kilena and Drevik never knew was that I had inherited a valuable seaside villa years ago. The property had been left to me under my mother's maiden name, so it was completely separate from my marriage assets. I moved into this beautiful home quietly after losing everything else in the divorce settlement. Using what little money I had left after paying legal fees and starting over, I began a small consulting firm. I focus on specialized structural engineering projects for coastal properties and marine construction. Within just 1 year, my new business became wildly profitable because of my reputation and expertise. I had lost everything I thought mattered in my life, only to rise again from the ashes stronger. My new company was earning more money than I had ever made working with Drevik over the years. I was living in a more beautiful home than the one I had lost in the divorce. I was free from the stress of maintaining relationships with people who had been lying to me. For the first time in decades, I felt genuinely happy and at peace with my life. A full year after Drevik's company collapsed and he was sent to prison, Kilena returned to court. This time she brought expensive lawyers with her to demand more money from me for our daughter. She claimed that my new business was booming and that I could afford to pay significantly more. She said that Brilith deserved a better lifestyle than what my current support payments could provide. She looked at me with cold eyes and a confident smile, believing she could manipulate the legal system again. But something Drevik had said during our prison visit kept echoing in my mind over those months. He had mentioned that he had been sleeping with her for over a decade, not just recently. Our daughter Brilith was now 11 years old, which meant she had been born during the time he claimed to be having an affair with my wife. This possibility had unsettled me for months, but I had buried the doubt beneath work and survival. Now, with Kilena back in court making demands for more money, I could no longer ignore what might be true. I requested a court-approved DNA test to determine whether Brilith was actually my biological daughter. The judge agreed to order the test despite strong objections from Kilena and her legal team. She laughed in my face when I made this request in front of everyone in the courtroom. She told me to go ahead because she was completely confident that Brilith was my daughter without any doubt. But when the results came back 2 weeks later, her confidence was shattered along with everything else. The judge read the DNA test results aloud in the packed courtroom, and the results showed that Brilith was not my biological daughter, and the silence that followed was deafening to everyone present. Kilena's face drained of all color as she processed what she had just heard from the judge. Her jaw dropped open in complete shock and disbelief at this unexpected revelation about our daughter's paternity. Her expensive lawyers sat speechless at their table, unsure how to respond to this devastating news. The entire courtroom fell into stunned silence until Kilena let out a scream that echoed off the walls. She lost everything in that single moment when the truth was finally revealed to everyone involved. The judge immediately revoked the child support order, since I had no legal obligation to support another man's child. Legal custody of Brilith was transferred to state review while they determined her actual father's identity and responsibility. With no job, no money, and no legal claim to my support payments, Kilena stood completely alone. Drevik was serving his prison sentence and could not help her even if he wanted to. Her future had disappeared, and her past was now exposed for everyone to see and judge. She collapsed outside the courthouse steps in tears, sobbing uncontrollably while people walked past her without stopping. I had my dignity back, my financial freedom restored, and my reputation cleared in the community where I lived. But as I drove home to my beautiful seaside villa that evening, something began to trouble me deeply. I started thinking about Brilith, the girl I had raised as my own daughter for 10 years. She had called me dad her entire life, and I had loved her as my own flesh and blood. I had attended every school play, every soccer game, every birthday party with genuine pride and affection. I had helped her with homework, taught her to ride a bicycle, and comforted her through nightmares. Now she was in state custody because her real father was in prison, and her mother had no resources. She was probably confused and frightened, wondering why the man she had always considered her father had abandoned her. She did not understand the adult complications that had led to this moment in the courtroom. She only knew that her family had been destroyed, and she was alone in the world. I realized in my quest for justice against Kilena and Drevik, I had hurt an innocent child who had done nothing wrong. Brilith had been as much a victim of their deception as I had been all these years. She had grown up believing I was her father, and now she was learning that everything she thought she knew about her family was a lie. The DNA test that had freed me from financial obligations had also severed the only father-daughter relationship she had ever known. I could have petitioned the court to maintain some relationship with her despite the test results. I could have continued to support her emotionally and financially because I had been the only father she had ever known. But my anger toward Kilena and my desire for complete revenge had made me cold toward the child. I had let my hurt feelings override my love for a girl who had never betrayed me. As weeks passed, I learned that Brilith was struggling in foster care and asking social workers why her father no longer wanted her. She could not understand why discovering she was not my biological child had changed everything about our relationship. She had loved me as her father, and I had loved her as my daughter for 10 years. Those feelings should not have disappeared because of a DNA test, but my need for justice had made me cruel. To this day, I do not know if I made the right choice in walking away from her. I achieved the justice I wanted against those who had wronged me so deeply and completely. But I also abandoned a child who had loved me and trusted me to always be there for her. I had become the kind of person who could hurt an innocent child to punish the adults who had hurt me. And that is when I understood something that still haunts me every single day. In my quest to destroy those who had betrayed me, I had become someone just as capable of betrayal myself. My story shows how betrayal can change good people into something they never thought they could become. When we are hurt deeply, we sometimes lose sight of what truly matters in our pursuit of justice and revenge. Here are the important lessons you can learn from my mistakes to protect yourself and your loved ones. 1. Always verify legal documents before signing anything, even when you trust the person completely. Get independent legal advice before transferring property or making major financial decisions, especially during emotional times like grief or divorce. 2. Remember that innocent people often get hurt when families break apart to betrayal and revenge. Children should never pay the price for adult mistakes and deceptions, no matter how justified your anger feels. Consider the long-term consequences of your actions on everyone involved, not just those who wronged you. 3. Protect yourself financially by keeping some assets separate and maintaining your own financial independence. Do not put everything in joint names or trust others completely with your financial security and future. 4. Be careful about mixing personal relationships with business partnerships, because when one fails, both can be destroyed. Keep detailed records of all business dealings and financial transactions to protect yourself if relationships turn sour. Comment below and tell me what resonated most with you from this story today. Like this video and subscribe to my channel if you want more content like this that helps you learn from others' mistakes. Until next time, keep living with grace and purpose.